Welcome, everybody, to our tonight's webinar. We're going to be talking about the Senior Center and other things in the community. And we'd like you to get online and send your questions so we can make sure we get them answered. These have been very popular going on so far, so we want to make sure that we continue to answer your questions and fill you in on what's going on. There's been a lot of misunderstandings and obviously blatant lies out there about things that have been going on. So please get online and ask us your questions, and we'll be going here for the next about 35, 40 minutes.
All right, Mr. Mayor, hope you're having a good evening.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Tell us about the Senior Center. That's been a subject of a lot of discussion, a lot of debate, a lot of anger out there over what went down there. So, start at the beginning. What happened with the Senior Center? Did it ever close? And what's its current status?
Well, first of all, it's never closed. It actually, we were being asked by the nonprofit back in the 2020 and 2021 to help support them financially through the city. And they're a nonprofit. They were having trouble during COVID financially, and were asking us in the council over a period of about 3 years. We were giving them general fund money to help run. And so this happened for a while. And then last year we were served with a $5 million tort claim because there was someone that was hurt while they were under the care of the nonprofit. And so after looking at those types of things, we were really worried about the financial stability of the nonprofit running the Senior Center. And so we ended up deciding to look at that and see what we could do to maybe make it more viable. And what we saw was that we really felt the city needed to run the Senior Center. And so in the lease that they were leasing the building for $1 a year that we had, and we were maintaining and cleaning it, there was a 120-day notice that we could give them. And within that 4 months, we would be able to put together a plan to make sure that we were able to supply and give the seniors all the things that they had before, and not disrupt their lives and their livelihood. So we decided to give them that 4 month notice, and they ended up having to leave. And the nonprofit decided to take their Senior Center stuff somewhere else. We started to program it through the city, and we really think it's been great. We've had a lot of folks come that go, "Oh, we thought you were closed. We were told that, you weren't going to open. You were going to close it, move, staff in there. You were going to sell it and build an apartment complex." I mean, there was all kinds of crazy stories, and we really, always wanted to just provide the services and make sure the seniors were taken care of. The council voted to terminate the lease. And we went on with that. And we've been providing meals ever since with Meals on Wheels, the same group that was there before. We have, card games that go on there. We have music, bingo, bridge, people play pool. There's all kinds of activities happening down there.
You mentioned the council voted on terminating the lease and taking over services with city staff. Was that a 3-1 vote or?
No, it was a unanimous 4-0 vote. And so that's what we did. We also voted to actually take legal action against the nonprofit because of the fact that we found out that they had $100,000 in their bank account when they were telling us during this whole process that they were about ready to have to close the doors. And that's why we were giving them money during the days of COVID and other stuff. So, that was kind of disheartening that we had to do that, but we got to fight to make sure taxpayer dollars are spent properly. And to be honest with you, they're a nonprofit, and there's so many in the city. How do you pick winners and losers when it comes to nonprofits? And so we just felt that it was important that we try to get that money back.
So what do you see as the role of the Senior Center in the Eagle community?
Oh, I think it's tremendous. It does a lot of good. It's not just about the Meals on Wheels meals or the card games and that. It's all about camaraderie and folks being able to get together and share stories and talk to each other. I love going over there for lunch. If you're under 60, you pay for lunch. If you're over 60, it's a suggested donation. And, I'll go over there and sit and talk and hear all the stories from those it's funny to hear the ones that have been in political stuff in the past, those that, have served in wars and veterans of our great country, to those folks that have lived here forever in Eagle. I mean, I love to sit down and hear the old stories of Eagle and how it was back in the day and in the 70s and 80s and even the 60s sometimes. So the senior center is a great place for them to be able to share their stories with each other, with others. And, we're really looking forward in the future to be able to, how do we meld, maybe our younger generation with our seniors at the senior center and have activities where the seniors can be showing the kids stuff and the kids can be showing the senior stuff, and just being able to provide, I think, more of a well-rounded senior center than what we had before.
So the senior center's open now. What days can people come in and have lunch?
Yep. So lunches are actually Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, which are the same days they've been for a long time when Meals on Wheels is there. The senior center is open every day from 8 to 5, and you can come in and use it. There are times when it's rented. We do rent it out. So if anybody ever wants to rent it, just like it always has been. So it's great to see the activity that's been going on there.
So what other things does the city provide besides, taking over the senior center now, but there's also Parks and Rec and, library and trails. What are some of the amenities that the city of Eagle provides its citizens?
Well, obviously the library has a tremendous amount of use. We just actually had the library. They started a family place over there where they took one of the meeting rooms and they turned it into a place that's meant for the younger kids. And it's kind of separated from the rest of the library so they can be kids. And that thing has been taken off. We're having, 500-600 people a day going through that place. It's just been amazing to see what happens. The library does all kinds of fun events. They have reading time and story time and music and all kinds of things for the kids in the community. What I love to hear the stories about the mom and dads that meet other mom and dads right through the program. It's the first friends they ever had when they move here is through the library. And that's such an important part of our, small town charm. And when we talk about, having those kind of things in our community. And so you've got that. Our Parks and Rec, we do basketball programs, we do soccer programs, and putting those things on are great for the community. Actually, our soccer program, when I became mayor, was about 120 kids, and now it's up to 500. And so that's just great. Our basketball program has started from about 60 that we were doing during COVID, the only thing around that was being run. We had people all throughout the valley that were coming to Eagle to play basketball because it was the only city that was putting on rec programming for kids during that time. And it started with about 90 kids, and now we're up over 300, almost 400 kids. So these types of programs, I think people are really looking forward to being a part of, and we're supplying them for our residents and taxpayers. And it's really paying off to have our kids active and not in front of the screen all the time.
Someone this morning asked about the Park on Floating Feather. I remember that had been in the works for a while, and then it just disappeared. What happened with that, and what's replacing it?
Yeah, so there's a couple things with that. So that piece of land was 35 acres. It was on Floating Feather, which is a tough road as it is because of the fact that you've got both the high school and middle school off of it. So it's already pretty busy. Then where that park space was, you look around it and it's surrounded by 1 acre lots and 2 acre lots. And so those folks don't buy 1 acre and 2 acre lots to have a park put right next to them. Parks are very active in the community. We have a lot of people going through them, and it creates a lot more trips in that area than what a normal, believe it or not, subdivision would. And so it really didn't make sense. And once again, the council 4-0 voted to, sell the property and then find another spot to put a park. The other thing too is that there's going to be a park, 1 acre's worth of park space at Beacon Light and Highway 16, the development that was approved years ago. And so, knowing that was going to be there too, it really made it a little bit easier to decide that this community park was not maybe the right place for this. But what we were able to do, which is really cool, is we were able to take that same $4.5 million we would have had into that 35 acres, and we were actually able to get 95 acres. So we're going to have a 95 acre regional sports park north of Beacon Light off Highway 16 that is going to be tremendous for the city long term. And, even though we have a $7.5 million that we have to to pay for the rest of that property to have there, that's going to be paid by future development from the Valnova project. So as homes are built up in that area, they'll pay a park impact fee, and that fee will go back to pay off that $7.5 million loan that we got with no interest, which is amazing. We were able to work this with the developer. And then what was really creative about it is if they don't build enough homes to pay the $7.5 million back, they get what they get. So let's say they only build enough homes and only capture enough park impact fees to get $4.5 million. That's what the developer will get for that property. Now, if we, for some reason, collect $10 or $11 million worth of impact fees, they still only get the 7.5. The rest would go into other projects that we could do throughout the city. And those park impact fees are very specific. They can only be used in certain park areas. And this was one of those places that it could be used for. So that's going to be tremendous. And now, you don't have the park that was there, having a dog park, once again, right next to 1 acre lots that have 3 rail fencing, that you see in a more, equestrian type or rural area. It was just not going to be good for those folks. And to be honest with you, our parks have about 500 to 1,000 people a day that go to them. And so if you just figure 2 trips on each, that's 1,000 to 2,000 trips that would have been on Floating Feather. 74 homes, which could be put on that property, is only 740 trips. So we actually were able to make sure that the trip capture was cut in half of what would have been there.
Well, I know going to Gerber Park during soccer season, those cars are parked all the way in the neighborhoods across the street. It's pretty crowded.
Well, yeah. And, those neighborhoods around there, just the fact that they're 1 acre and 2 acre lots, they don't have sidewalks, right? They don't have traditional sidewalks. So, you got people parking on the street. Then when people want to walk in those communities, they're out in the middle of the road, and it just doesn't make for a very safe environment.
So tell us more about the sports park. What kind of amenities are going to be there? What's the timetable? Can you go into more detail about the costs to the city?
Yeah, so it's 95 acre sports park. It's going to have a trailhead up into the BLM property. That there's about 1,600 acres of BLM property that people can go up and hike and bike and shoot and do all kinds of things. They'll have that access. It'll have baseball fields and softball fields. It will have a place for rugby, lacrosse, soccer, flag football, pickleball courts, which we all know everybody loves. We get more ask for pickleball courts, I think, than anything. It'll have tennis. It'll just have a variety of all kinds of walking trails that you'll be able to go around. And I think it'll just be one of those parks that has a little bit of everything for everybody.
Switching gears here, the sale of the Eagle Water Company, that was an issue during your last campaign. And then it's been sort of a debate ever since. There was somebody asked a question this morning that we didn't have a chance to get to, saying that her water bills this summer went up tenfold. And she said that she thought that the contract, the agreement with Suez, meant that it would stay low. So what might have happened there? And what was the background on the sale of the Eagle Water Company?
Yeah, so I have fought for 15 years to try to get the city of Eagle to purchase that over and over and over again. And, when I ran, I said, I want us to own the water system. I want it to come into the city of Eagle, but it has to make sense. And I will fight to get it here. But once again, it has to make sense. Once we started doing our due diligence on it, we just realized that financially it was not going to be something that the city of Eagle could take on. When we originally looked at the whole thing, we were looking at having to run about a $15 million bond in order to build or purchase the water system. $7 million of that was just for repairs. Well, once we got done going through it, we realized that the city of Eagle trying to pass a $15 million bond was probably going to be very hard to do. And it cost a lot of money. We already had $1 million in attorney's fees involved in going through this process and trying to purchase a system. We then would have had another $1 million into running a bond and trying to promote and get people to understand why they need to pass it. And if you look at Eagle, we couldn't, get a $2 million bond passed to build City Hall. How are we ever going to get a $15 million bond? So we could have been $2 million in the hole and got nothing. And the city of Eagle just can't afford that type of stuff. So we decided to negotiate with Suez to try to do a lot of other things that we felt were better for the people that were on the Eagle water system. So a few things. We found out through the process of purchasing it that Eagle Water didn't have any extra water. So there was no water going to be pumped out of the area and up to somewhere else. They barely had enough water to even suffice the people that are on it today. And as a matter of fact, had to make interties with other agencies in order to have fire protection, enough water for fire protection. Then you looked at the fact that the price. So your bill, if Eagle would have taken it over, it would have had to be the same price as everybody else in Eagle is paying. And ours base rate was 3 times what Eagle Water was and twice as much as what Suez's was. So people's bills immediately would have gone up, double, triple what they had because of the fact that we can't charge different people different prices because we're not regulated by the PUC like others are. So it has to be the same price for everybody. So then we looked at what could we do to stagger the price increases to those folks so they didn't see it all at once. And so we staggered it over 7 years. So those prices will go up gradually over 7 years. Now the person that got the bill that was tenfold or whatever it happened to be, what we found out after Suez purchased it, starting it putting together, was that Eagle Water was not charging people based on their use. They had gotten to the point where they were only charging people flat rates. And that's not how the system was supposed to be done, and not sure why they did that. So now people are paying for their actual usage of what they're doing. And that rate is the rate that went up is Eagle Water had a rate based on how much you use, right? For every gallon you use. And so now you're paying that percentage increase of the gallon you use, but you're actually being billed for the gallons you're using. So where they were just sending out a $13 bill, or a $20 bill in the summer, they weren't actually doing that off reading your meter. They were just kind of doing it in a flat rate way. And we found out some folks, actually, their water meters were hooked up to 2 or 3 different houses. And so once again, that's why the flat rate was being done. And so it's been kind of a mess. I'll tell you the one thing that we really dodged a bullet is we are now being told by Suez that there will be $24 million worth of improvements. Sorry, it's Veolia now. $24 million worth of improvements. When we originally looked at purchasing the system, it was $7 million. I mean, if we would have had to put that much money into the system to make it up to code and up to speed, it would have bankrupted the city. Now, a lot of people have also with the water system, they're upset with the fact that there's chlorine now in the water, because Eagle Water was not putting chlorine in. We do that also because it's best practices. So even if we would have taken it over, it would have had the chlorine. Your bill would have gone up immediately 3 or 4 times what it did through Suez or Veolia. And so really we were looking out to how do we make sure that it works best for the residents in the long term.
I remember last summer there was a period where the water tasted kind of funny, and people were complaining about that. Was that did something go wrong, or was that just normal?
No, it's normal. So whenever you introduce chlorine into a water system, it's cleaning out and it's moving the debris from the lining of the pipes. So once again, whether we had purchased it and added chlorine or Veolia, it was either or. And what was really interesting is, we have 3 people in our water department. And a department head. So you got 4. Suez had 14 to 15 people a day on the ground working on the transfer over and the changeover and fixing of the system. I mean, there's no way that we could have ever taken this on and made it viable. All of our systems are new in our water system. Everything is clean. There's no lead pipe. There's no nothing. It's all PVC. And so for us to take on something like this was just been an unbelievable burden on the city and the residents of Eagle.
So switching gears once again, this morning somebody asked about the shooting range. First, why did you and the council decide to pursue that? And when do you see that coming to fruition?
Well, obviously, making ourselves a 2A sanctuary city, our Second Amendment rights are very important to us. And so, the shooting range was originally looked at being put on the BLM land that is south of Velnova and north of Beacon Light. And we were just afraid of putting money into a shooting range that was going to be on federal land. You never know what the feds are going to do. And we ended up having a developer, Valnova, dedicate or donate 600 acres to us over off of Willow Creek. And so we thought, well, we need to put it on our own land because of the fact that then we can control what happens with it in the future. And so we're going to take out of that 600 acres that was donated to us, 80 acres is going to be an archery and a pistol and a rifle range. The archery will have static archery along with 3D archery. And then we'll have about 10 bays of 10 bays of pistol and 3 or 4 of rifle, all the way up to a 200-yard rifle range. The other thing that's great about this is we set aside 15 acres for a law enforcement component. And what's really nice about that is, having law enforcement come through our city that aren't necessarily our law enforcement really shows a presence. And we think that'll be huge moving forward. So when you're talking about having a shooting range out there that the FBI, ATF, Attorney General's office, then you can have we might work out with the Ada County Sheriff to have a training facility, the Meridian Police, the Garden City Police. So having those folks coming through our city for training is going to be, I think, a big thing in the future.
Since you brought up police, that's obviously been a big deal here in the campaign. As for a while, your opponent was making public safety the centerpiece of his campaign and the reason why he was challenging you. And you had the negotiations with the sheriff's department. So walk us through the status of public safety in Eagle, the status of policing, how it's changed over the last 4 years and where it's going.
Yeah. So obviously public safety is number one. You cannot have a good community like we do without public safety. We contract with the Ada County Sheriff's Department. And I think that relationship is something that we want to continue as long as possible. And it makes sense for the city of Eagle. But we have to be able to ask questions and make sure that we're getting the best for what our taxes are paying. And so if you look at what we've done over the last 4 years, we've actually increased the police budget by 24% over the last 4 years. We've added 4 officers. We added a community policing officer, which is someone who goes and will, on traffic accidents, will be the one that's directing traffic rather than using an officer that could be out somewhere else doing something. And then that community officer can take people back and forth, not people, but take evidence back and forth between the sheriff's office and the jail. And so that's important. Once again, it keeps our officers within the city. And then you've got the fact that we've done so many other things for public safety on top of that. I'm talking about the future of the shooting range, which I just did, and what that'll do. You've also, most people might not know that we monitor our cameras at night at our parks. And so we're making sure that our officers don't have to spend time driving through the parks and doing that. They can be doing other things because it's a lot cheaper to hire a company to actually watch the park. And then when something happens, they get to call non-emergency dispatch or 911 if it's an emergency and get an officer out there right away. And really, it's taken the amount of vandalism and issues we're having at our parks almost down to zero. In the last about 8-9 months that we've been doing this, we've had one incident. And that incident happened before we actually start monitoring those cameras. And so it's been tremendous. And I think it saved us a lot of time. It gets our officers spending more time in our neighborhoods, making sure that, if you leave your garage door open, your golf clubs don't get stolen, making sure that your kids are out riding their bikes, that they're safe. And that's really, the kind of things that we want to do moving forward. So
tell us more about the negotiations with Ada County Sheriffs this past fall. Was the Sheriff Department asking for more officers? What was your feeling on that, and what agreement did you come to?
Yeah, no. So I meet with the chief all the time. I've met since day one. I've met with them every year. We come together at budget time and talk about what's needed. Ever since I've been mayor, we've always done what the chief has asked or the Sheriff's Department has asked from us. The first year I was mayor, our chief was Sheriff Clifford. He was our chief, and he comes in and he said, "Hey, last year we added a couple officers. I don't think we need to add any more this year, but we really need to make sure we're thinking about it, depending on what the statistics look like for the following year." So we didn't add any that year. The next year came, and we sat down and talked again, and we were kind of like, once again, looking at it going, yeah, we should probably add some. And so we got talking and we thought, you know what, we need to add some specific officers this year. And it was for the green belt and for the trails and for the parks. And so these officers spend more time on bicycles and throughout those areas to make sure that, people are minding their P's and Q's and coming through the city. Not everybody that use our trails and our bikes and the green belt and the parks live in the city of Eagle. And so we had 2 officers that would be dedicated to that type of service. And what's really good about that is, if you think about it, when a regular officer uses a bike, he parks in a parking lot, gets on his bike, he rides out 10, 15 minutes, and then he gets a call. He's got to ride 10, 15 minutes back to his car, and then he's got to, go to the call. Where this way, we have more officers out there for those calls, and these guys are specific just to the trails and the parks. And that was a really big thing. And of course, that year we also added a community officer. So what we did is we took in-house one of the officers that were doing code enforcement. We decided to take that responsibility to someone in-house, and then we were able to change that person into a community officer, like I talked about, that takes stuff back and forth between the jail and then also does traffic control and stuff for accidents is out there, and other things too throughout the community, burglar alarm checks. There's a lot of times when people call the police department and say, hey, I'm going to be out of town for 2 weeks. Can you drive by my house and make sure nothing's going on or there isn't any issues? And so they can do those kind of things also.
Have any of the members of the council been proactive in going out there and finding other ways to increase and improve public safety?
Yeah, so we've looked at things, and Councilmember Russell stepped up and said, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find some grants and find out how we can do this. We noticed that Star had done one, CUNA had done one. And so we went out, and Helen found the grant, went through with our chief, and got through the process, and was presented a few weeks ago, and really went out and did something to make sure that we can bring money in. So what this is it's a program where we get 2,080 hours, 75% of that time we get paid for by the state, and we only have to come up with 25%. So it'll help pay for some of the officers we have, but it also will give us the ability to hire more officers sooner, because you get these grants. You have to look at them every year and be put in for them, but it's something that I think we can help be creative in how we add more officers and make sure that we are, providing a safe community.
Shifting from police to fire, I've had several people ask how the city of Eagle manages our fire department and how much of our tax dollars go toward that.
Yeah, well, I think it's really important for people to understand that we as the city do not do or deal with the fire department as far as we don't run it. It is a fire district. They call it the Eagle Fire Department, but they have a much bigger area than just the city limits of Eagle. They take care of a lot of the area in the county. As a matter of fact, they're responsible for Hidden Springs, and they were responsible for Avamore even before we annexed it. And so it's important for folks to know that that's a separate taxing entity. It's separate elected officials that take care of that budgeting and everything else. And it doesn't come through your City of Eagle taxes.
So can you clarify on that? What are different taxing districts and what is actually managed by the city?
Yeah, so if you could look at your tax bill, you've got about 12 different things on there. Some people have 13, some people have 11. It kind of differentiates. Believe it or not, it depends on what part of Eagle you live in. Some people in Eagle pay Boise school district taxes because their kids go to Boise schools. Then others pay West Ada school district taxes, and so because they go to West Ada schools. Some are, the Star Cemetery, some are the Dry Creek Cemetery, some are the Eagle Sewer, and some are not. And so it all depends on where you are within the city. And if you look at that, all those different taxing agencies, they all have elected officials that are responsible for putting the budget together, which then in turn, you pay taxes to them based on their budget. And so we're saying Eagle, our big responsibilities are trails, parks, running your everyday city, the library, and then policing. That's where most of your city taxes go to.
Speaking of the city of Eagle as an office, there are a lot of cities throughout the country where they have a city manager that actually runs the city, and then the mayor is more of maybe a figurehead. Whereas Eagle is not like that, is it?
No, Eagle is not. As a matter of fact, I kind of run things day to day. The budget is put in front of me by the council, and then I am the one that's supposed to implement that. I take care of all, employee issues, all that stuff. It's like running a mini company. And so it's a job. It's something that, it's a lifestyle. I'll tell you that, because, it's not like a typical CEO where, you come in, you work, you go home, I'm at the grocery store, I'm at Home Depot, I'm at, Winco, and people are coming up. My family's having dinner at a restaurant, and they love to talk about the city. And that's why I love being mayor, because you get to talk about the city and do that too. But there's a lot of the everyday. I put probably a good 12 to 16 hours a day into the city of Eagle doing stuff, taking calls at 6 a.m. until 10 o'clock at night, and sometimes earlier and sometimes later, depending on what's going on. With a city manager type, what you're doing, and why I'm not a big fan of the city managers, you really have bureaucracy running your city, right? You're going to have elected officials who get elected. They really don't know what they're doing. And so they come in and they start to, have the establishment and the folks that are there that work there, kind of drive what happens. And that doesn't happen here. You come in with visions, you come in with ideas, you make them happen, you do the work, right? You don't just push everything off to staff and others. That's one of the great things I love about what Councilmember Russell did with this, grant for the police. She took the bull by the horns. She went out, she did the work, she got it, she brought it back. Charlie Baughan, as the president of the council and other things, he did that with the CEP program, the Conservation Education Program, which will help put money in so we can help preserve farmland and other open space throughout the city without it coming out of taxpayer dollars. And, we've just had so many of the council members step up and do that.
You mentioned Home Depot just now. One of the things that seems to be generating a lot of discussion is the city's lawsuit against Home Depot. So tell me, why are you suing them?
Yeah, well, what happened was back in the early 2000s when Home Depot went in, Eagle was very worried about a big box store coming to the city. We hadn't had one like that before. And so they put some very strict restrictions in their contract to be able to come in. And it had to do with how the store was going to look, what stuff they could put outside, how much stuff they could store outside and store inside. And so what we found out is Home Depot about 6 years ago started taking advantage of the fact of what they could do. And they started putting a lot of material. They would over order and put it out there, and then it would just kind of look junky. There was trash, blowing around, and we just didn't want that in the city of Eagle. And so when I became mayor, there had already been some steps taken to try to get them to fall within compliance of the contract. Once again, you can't pick and choose which contracts that you enforce. You need to enforce them all. And so we worked with them for 3.5 years. I went out and talked to the store manager, talked to the regional manager. We had attorneys talking to the local attorneys, all those things. And finally, it came to the point where they just weren't going to make a change. They weren't going to come into compliance with that contract. And so it was the only thing that we could do is start a lawsuit. The council voted 4-0 to do that lawsuit. I then went out and we implemented that. And now, believe it or not, Home Depot corporate and some of the others have stepped up and said, you know what, we are in the wrong. We're going to fix this and we're going to make it right. This should never have gotten to this point. And so we're really looking to getting this wrapped up and getting things back to looking nice and making sure they're just following the rules and the contract they agreed to. It's nothing that like 5 years later we changed the law or 10 years later we changed the rules, right? That just isn't what happened. These aren't code violations. These are contract violations. And so we just think that when you say you're going to do something, you should do it.
Well, it sounds like the system worked in this case.
Yeah, definitely. And, you look at Winco. Winco has done a great job. Their store always looks really nice. They're always cleaning stuff up around it. They don't store a bunch of stuff in the back. If you need to expand your store, then expand your store. But you got to go through the process properly, and you can't let, one of the things I've always compared, if you had one of the small mom and pops in downtown Eagle, storing a bunch of stuff outside and stuff started looking junky and they had a contract in place, you would make them do the same thing. And we just can't, because they're the big guys, look the other way and expect it not to happen.
Something you mentioned there, you mentioned a 4-0 council decision. It sounds like that happens a lot. Have you and the council been on the same page for the last 4 years?
Oh, yeah. I would say with probably 98% of the things.
Interesting. So as we're coming up to the end of our time here, What are some of the things that you're most proud of that you and the council have accomplished in your time here?
Well, there's a couple things. One is, believe it or not, Avamore. We need to take the bull by the horns and make sure that development doesn't creep in on us from other folks. I think my opponent has wanted to kind of take away the responsibility of making sure things get done Eagles way, just to make it look like he's not for any kind of development, and that's just not going to happen. Avamore was going to happen whether it came into the city or not, and either we do it Eagles way or we allow others to do it their way. As a matter of fact, about 4 to 5 weeks after we approved Avamore, the county approved a project in CUNA at 8 times the density of what we approved Avamore at. We don't want someone else to have our fate in their hands. Another one that he brags about is one that was 400 units over on near Highway 16. It was right next to Star. That project was approved at 2 units per acre. And if Star would have had it, they start at 3 units. It could have gone to 5 units. We don't want that in the same exact land with the same Eagle residents around it. One, we wouldn't have been collecting any tax dollars from it. And two, it would have been way more of a nuisance on the city of Eagle than it would have if we brought it in ourselves and did it. So kind of taking away responsibility, and you have to take responsibility for these things if you want to make sure the city of Eagle is going to be done right for a long time. The other one is I'm really proud of the council. We had a 55-foot building in downtown Eagle that was brought to us, and it was going to be right where Rembrandt's and around Rembrandt's is. And all the council members, they decided not to second the motion that Councilman Pike made to approve that project. And in those comments saying that, we need to help it pencil for the developers. That's not our job. Our job is to make sure we get the products and the things we want in Eagle. That project would have had a variance of 15 feet in height of what we allow in the downtown Eagle. That is just not something that I think we want for the future of Eagle. And I'm very happy that they said no. I'm happy that we are not going down that path, because I think once you open that Pandora's box, it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse.